Greetings Netherlords and welcome to the Dawnbreaker guide on Mythic Plus difficulty. There's gonna be a lot of flying, so let's take off. Before diving into Speaker Shadowcrown's tactics, a quick note for pet heavy specs and builds. This fight is incredibly buggy and at the time of writing it hasn't been fixed. Melee pets and minions tend to linger around or get stuck, and some even fall through the ground. If possible, avoid playing Demonology until this issue is resolved, and steer clear of minion summoning hero classes and talents. The safest choice for this dungeon is to go Affliction and use an imp for this fight, though even the imp occasionally falls through the ground. Now onto the tactics. Speaker Shadowcrown is a highly movement and positioning intensive fight, which can be challenging for Warlocks. The main ability you'll need to manage as a ranged DPS is Collapsing Night, which drops a growing void pool when the cast finishes. These void pools expand in size and should be placed on the outskirts of the ship. Avoid dropping them in the middle as they deal heavy ticking damage and make her other ability, Obsidian Beam, much harder to handle. After hitting the tank and dealing some group-wide AoE, 3 void beams will start spinning from Shadowcrown. You'll need to dodge these or you'll be hit with a nasty ticking dot that stacks with each additional hit. To make things more challenging, the beams speed up over time, so you'll have to move constantly and use your movement abilities to avoid them. Shadowcrown will also apply Burning Shadows to a random player, dealing low damage but applying a 50% slope. While this is primarily a healer mechanic, you can use your imp's Singe magic to remove it. However, doing so places a party-wide healing absorb shield, so it's usually better to leave this to your healer. True to her name, Shadowcrown loves spamming Shadow Bolts whenever she's not casting other void-based abilities. Interrupting these isn't very effective, but Curse of Tongues helps a lot. If you pair it with Amplify Curse, you'll significantly reduce party damage, so consider this for higher keys. Lastly, at 50% and 0 health, the boss will attempt to annihilate the party with Void Explosion. When this happens, mount up, collect a Light Orb, and stay far away until she finishes her Black Hole cosplay. As usual, the best time to burst is at the start, before all the voidy stuff start flying around. Anub'ikkaj, the second boss, draws power from his lieutenants, which grants him health and their main abilities. You must kill the lieutenants before engaging the boss. This is not optional because they give him massive HP buff. We'll cover the lieutenants later in the video, but for now let's focus on Anub'ikkaj. The core ability you'll need to manage is Dark Orb. When targeted, ensure there are no walls or solid obstacles behind you, as Dark Orb's damage is proximity based. The further away the orb travels before hitting something, the less damage it will deal to the party. Also, avoid getting hit by the orb as it travels, as it leaves heavy dot on contact. His second borrowed mechanic, Shadowy Decay, inflicts heavy pulsating AoE damage to the entire group. Alternate between your defensives to help mitigate the damage and ease the load on your healer. The third borrowed ability, Terrifying Slam, is a tank buster with a large circle. Simply avoid standing in the circle to stay safe from this mechanic. Anub'ikkaj's only original ability is Animate Shadows, which summons adds that cast Congealed Darkness. Although these adds are brittle and die quickly to AoE, their casts hit extremely hard. Stun, interrupt, and burst them down to prevent them from casting. 1 or 2 casts are probably manageable, but any more than that will likely result in a wipe, especially on higher keys. You can burst whenever you have your cooldowns ready, as the fight is very stationary and the mobs you'll fight before Anub'ikkaj are more problematic than the boss himself. Rasha'nan, a guest from Nerubar Palace, presents a relatively simple fight, but it can be punishing if you or your teammates mess up any key mechanics. The encounter is split into 3 phases: the airship phase, the flying phase, and the ground phase. During the airship phase, the main mechanic to watch out is Rolling Acid, a wall of acid that flows from you once its timer expires. Position yourself so the acid moves away from the party and doesn't hit anyone. Another mechanic to manage is Arathi Bombs. 3 bombs will spawn at a time, and you and your teammates must use them to damage the boss. If others are slow to act, use your movement abilities to gather the bombs quickly and throw them at the boss. Any bombs left unused will explode, dealing significant damage to your party. Note that you need to be close to the boss to use the extra action button. Erosive Spray is a healer mechanic, but it hits hard and ticks over time, so help your healer when possible. Final ability in the airship phase is Expel Webs. Avoid getting hit or you'll be rooted, which is particularly troublesome with so many movement-reliant mechanics. Once you've hit Rasha'nan with bombs 6 times, the ship phase ends, and it's time to chase the boss on your flying mount, collecting orbs again along the way. And that's pretty much it for this phase. In the ground phase, the boss will land and repeat most mechanics from the airship phase, except for the bombs. They're gone. The only new mechanic is Spinneret's Strand, which puts a circle around you and deals substantial damage to anyone caught in it, so move far away as you'll also drop a web pool. As the original target, you'll be tethered to a web wrap and take heavy damage each second until you move away and snap the strand. Use your demonic circle or gateway to snap the strand quickly. This will deal minor AoE damage to the party, but nothing your healer can't handle. Note that rolling acid destroys sticky webs left behind by Spinneret's Strand and creates acid pools. This is an additional reason to properly manage web pool drops. When the boss reaches 60% health, she flies off to Nerebar Palace to torment the raiders. While most boss fights in the Dawnbreaker are relatively simple and straightforward, the trash mobs are much nastier, and there are a lot of them. Before boarding the airship, you'll face Nightfall Curseblades, who like to stack an attack speed buff on themselves. If your dispelling allies are preoccupied, your Fellhound can use Devour Magic to remove all stacks from a single Curseblade. Nightfall Ritualists channel a strong dot and put an exploding seed on you, so try to mitigate this whenever possible. Nightfall Shadow Mages spam Nightbolt and occasionally cast Ensnaring Shadows, which should always be interrupted when possible. Fourth member of the Nightfall family, the Commander, casts a shield that also deals group-wide damage. This is always a priority interrupt. While in the air, you'll encounter Sureki Web Mages. As typical of Nerubians, they spam Web Bolt and cast Bursting Cocoon, so be sure to spread out and avoid hitting fellow party members. While clearing your path to fight Anub'ikkaj, you'll encounter a variety of new mobs. Manifested Shadows have 3 dangerous abilities: Abyssal Rot, which is a strong group-wide dot, Dark Flows, a group-wide AoE that deals pulsating damage, and Black Hail, an avoidable swirling. One of the grounded members of the Nightfall family, Tactician, attacks with a frontal cone and can enrage, increasing their damage output even more, so just keep dodging. Another member of the Nightfall faction, Darkcaster, has 2 abilities that should be interrupted. The more important one is Umbral Barrier, a large self-shield that grants the mob permanent health if it expires. The second is Tormenting Beam, a 6-second channel that deals substantial damage, making it equally important to interrupt. Fortunately, these mobs are vulnerable to various forms of crowd control, so you don't have to rely solely on interrupts. Lastly, just skip Sureki militants because they're way overtuned on hierarchies and have plethora of deadly abilities, so I'm not gonna even bother explaining them. Circling back to Anub'ikkaj's lieutenants, there's 3 of them that you must kill before fighting the boss. Ixcretin grants him the tank-busting Terrifying Slam. Just keep clear of the tank and you'll be fine. Visacoxria is responsible for granting Shadowy Decay, a heavy pulsating AoE effect, so use defensive when she starts channeling. Lastly, Akentek bestows Anub'ikkaj with the dreaded Dark Orb, a proximity-based projectile. Remember to aim it as far away as possible and avoid letting it hit any solid obstacles or yourself. The last and probably nastiest member of the Nightfall family is the Dark Architect. You'll want to use your cooldowns here, as she's honestly tougher than the last boss. First, she constantly summons reinforcements including Shadow Mages, Curse Blades, and Shadow Stalkers. She also casts Tormenting Eruption, so make sure to spread to avoid hitting your allies. Since you'll want to save interrupts for the Shadow Mages, use Curse of Tongues to slow down the Architect's casting. And there you have it! Everything you need to know to successfully navigate Dawnbreaker and put a stop to the Nightfall Mafia and their Nerubian friends. Remember to Soulstone, and goodbye.